Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 154, and this show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. So we go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week. This week I have 18 comics. Now, before I start the show, just have a little update. Next week I won't have Comic Uno episode, just because of Comic-Con. It's not going to happen. So check out Frontline Live the week after, the Tuesday after San Diego, and I'll have my top 5 there and thoughts about those comics. So also I did this review super early. Got to read all my comics, so that was nice. So there you guys go. Wednesday Comic Uno episode instead of a Friday episode. Alright, so let's get started. Let's move on to number 18, our worst pick of the week. Nothing too horrible this week, honestly, but my worst pick of the week was Satellite Falling, issue 3. I really enjoyed the first issue. Second issue was a little bit lacking, and now this issue, it didn't have the hook as much as I wanted from what I had with issue 1 with the characters. Also, I mean, the artwork is a little hard to get into, so that's a negative, but I'm going to continue to see where it goes. I definitely like the potential love story going on here, but wasn't as connected to this one, so I gave it 2.5 stars. That's number 18. Moving on to number 17, another indie book, sadly, and that's Birthright, issue 17. Not a bad issue, but a very exposition-heavy issue. It's the grandfather talking about, you know, that history, the magic history, and I'm like, whoa, this is getting a little boring. So I think they could have given that information a little bit less exposition way and told us in a different way. So that portion was boring, and also I feel like the story with Mikey and even the pregnancy didn't really progress that much. So I gave Birthright issue 17 2.5 stars, and that was number 17. Moving on to number 16, which is a book I'm probably dropping, and that is Power Man and Iron Fist issue 6. Not a bad book, but I was never a really big Heroes for Hire fan. I only really got this because of Jessica. And I still like the chemistry between Power Man and Iron Fist, but it just doesn't seem like my type of book. And I like the Civil War tie-in to it. I liked how Danny and Luke were connected in some way to either War Machine or She-Hulk. I enjoyed that aspect, but it wasn't enough for me. I didn't like the other aspect of it. So I still really like the friendship, but I'm going to probably have to drop this one just because there's so many books coming out also. So I gave this 3 stars. And that was number 16. Moving on to number 15, which is, again, a low DC Rebirth book, but The Flash, issue 2. This improved a bit from issue 1, but still not really up there for me for the DC Rebirth titles. Now, what I liked about this is that we get to learn a little bit more about Godspeed Augustus, and that he's Flash's partner right now. Even though he's going to become a villain, we know that, or at least that's how it's been promoted. It's interesting to see that he's actually Barry's friend and that he finds out about Barry very quickly. And then what really hooked me on this issue, though, was the ending where everyone's getting hit by lightning. Now, of course, we already knew this if you listened to the DC Rebirth WonderCon panel. We already knew all this was going to happen. But I did like it. Now, the reason I didn't love this issue is the artwork still. I really don't like the style that much. It's a little muddy to me. It feels crumbly, a little bit too much line work. I just don't really like the art style for The Flash. It fits like a Constantine Magic type book, but not a Flash book. Even though the Speed Force looks kind of cool in it. But yeah, and there's also some lull moments where I don't really care about Augustine that much as a character yet. Even though he has a cool bond with Barry, I don't really care for him separately, and that's a big problem too, because he is this kind of main force for this DC Rebirth title right now. So I gave The Flash issue 2 3 stars. It's an improvement, but still not really up there for me. Alright, what are we up to now? Let's see. We are up to, sorry, I had to put someone on the floor, number 14, which is, sad to see this so low, Nightwing Rebirth, issue 1. Now, this is a book I was actually most anticipating, or one of them from DC Rebirth. And I don't think this is going to qualify for issue 1, but for a transition issue, for the one-shot, it was a little bit too much Grayson for me. Now, I didn't really like the Grayson run. I didn't read it for that reason. Now, the reason I was excited for Nightwing is because it's Tim Seeley writing it. He did write Grayson, but I like his other work, like Revival is one of my favorite series. So, I was excited. Now, I think after this, we can totally go into Nightwing stuff and forget about Grayson. This is very much an ending chapter of Grayson. Talking about the Court of Owls, which was very New 52, his spy stuff, and even like when they talked about his name and going back to being Nightwing, I didn't really feel much. It didn't really give any heaviness to me, where I feel like these transition issues should do that to make you want to pick up issue 1. The only time I really seen that was like Superman, Green Lanterns did a good job at that, Titans did a good job at that. So Nightwing issue 1, I'm hoping it's just a transition issue that makes me feel that way, but I gave it 3 stars. I was a bit disappointed with it. Not a bad issue, still an enjoyable read for the most part, but just not very enjoyable. Also, the art style is a little cartoony, a lot of bold lines here, so that's kind of weird, but I like the colors. So Nightwing issue 1, Rebirth gets 3 stars, and that was number, I believe, 14. Yes, so now we're moving on to number 13, which is Powerpuff Girls issue 1. Excited to see this actually higher than I expected. I got this just because I really don't like the new cartoon, but mostly because of the voice acting. So I'm like, well, the comic doesn't have voice acting, so, you know, I'll read it and see if it's good. And I didn't really like the plot that much, but there are some nice jokes here and there. I like some small moments, like instead of having a landline, they have a cell phone, which was kind of weird, but made sense to me. And also artwork I felt like was pretty good. I mean, it still has that newer look, but it's definitely better in the comic. It also feels a little bit like the older work. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I mean, again, it wasn't the most enjoyable story, probably not, but it still gave me enough to at least try out issue 2. So I'm giving that 3 stars, and that's number 13. Number 12 is Millarworld Annual 2016, issue 1. I like this. I mean, there wasn't any story that really stuck out to me besides Hit Girl, but I like that it was new writers, new artists working on this title. And overall, like, even if you'd never read this, you know, one of the stories, it was understandable. Like Chronauts, I never really read it, but I knew about it, and I understood the story, and it was actually one of the more enjoyable stories here. So overall, it's only $2.99. I think you should, if you want to try out like a new writer, an artist, there's some nice little short stories here to read. And like I said, for a cheap price. So I gave that 3.5 stars. That was number 12, I believe. Yeah, so now we're moving on to number 11, which is Action Comics issue 959. I thought this was an improvement from last issue. Now, I think out of everyone on Frontline, I'm not enjoying the Superman books as much as my frontline you know, members here. So I like this issue though. I like that it went back to what the death of Superman was about, how Lois felt about it. So we got a little bit of the family, and we have a cliffhanger ending where Doomsday, like, does he kill Clark? What's happening here? So it's still a little slower. It's still very action heavy and not really story heavy. But the artwork's well done. I like it, and I'm interested to see where it goes. Still a good action issue. So Action Comics gets issue 959 gets 3.5 stars. All right, so we are moving on to number 10, which is Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth, issue 1. Glad to see this higher. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Vendetti's run of Green Lanterns beforehand, even though I think he improved a lot with his later half of Green Lanterns. But I like this issue. Did it progress a lot? A little bit. You know, gave us to our status quo of what Hal Jordan, or how Hal Jordan has become a regular Green Lantern, and why he's one of the best Green Lanterns. He was able to turn the gauntlet into a ring, which only the Guardians were able to do, so that's just how powerful he is. Artwork was pretty good. I really like the coloring. There's times where, like, the art's a little lanky, like, you know, these thin lines, but overall I thought it really worked, and I liked the story. I thought it was a pretty good transition issue. Did it make me super excited to read issue 1? I think that was the biggest problem with the issue, but still, it was a good issue. So, I give Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth issue 1 3.5 stars, and definitely gave me enough to want to pick up issue 2. Alright, so we're moving on to number 9, which is Web Warriors, issue 9. A book I'm having a lot of fun with just because I'm a huge May fan. There's aspects of this book I really like. I liked when Spider-Gwen was in the cartoony world and she's making her side comment saying, I could stare directly at the sun and it doesn't hurt my eyes. I'm going crazy, I think, and this is a fun thing. So I loved Gwen's portion. May, of course, just seeing May and having her personality right here. And then the ending really made the issue for me where we see Octavia, I think her name is. Yeah, Octavia go to May's house, to Mary Jane and Uncle Ben and say, I thought you'd like to help us bring her home. So I thought that was great. And I like that the story's kind of centered around also bringing May home, even though she's never on the covers. The parts I felt were a little boring, or some of the other character stories, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, Spider-Man Noir, like trying to make friends. There were some lacking moments there, but there's a lot of fun moments at the same time that makes the issue worth reading. So Web Warriors issue 9 gets 3.5 stars. And that's number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Guardians of the Galaxy issue 10. So this issue, it was a good, like, I think, fun issue. It didn't really, like, go anywhere with the story. It's just like, the Guardians are back. They're together. Now we have to, of course, tie into Civil War 2. But there's a lot of good moments with, obviously, Kitty and Peter, who are my favorite part of this series. Really good style, at least the style of the artwork's really good. Some of the colors make things look very crowded, but I really do like the style of the art. I think it looks beautiful, especially some of these facial expressions here. But yeah, overall I gave it 3.5 stars. There's not a lot of progression in this issue, but still a fun issue to read. So Guardians of the Galaxy issue 10 was number 8, and that gets 3.5. Moving on to number 7, which is Wonder Woman issue 2. And I really like this. I was excited for this issue because I love Black Magic, and I really enjoyed Nicola Scott's artwork. And I like that even though I'm not a huge Wonder Woman fan, I felt connected to this year 1 story. Learning a little bit about Wonder Woman and her connections to her other Amazons is a big part in this issue. But also seeing Steve Trevor's story and how in a lot of ways, even though they're very different, they relate with each other. And I really like how Greg Rucka wrote that. And then they end up meeting in the end. So I'm very excited to see Greg Rucka's kind of portrayal on how this relationship's going to go. Because I feel like this is very different from, you know, what just recently came out, Legends of Wonder Woman, which took a different take on Wonder Woman. So I love the artwork. That was also added plus. I love facial expressions with Nicola Scott. Here's a good example of that. Beautiful colors. And I think he definitely used the mythology of Wonder Woman very well. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars actually. I thought it was a very solid issue. So that was number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is New Superman, issue 1. This was a pleasant surprise. Even though I was very excited for this book, I like that this was different than I expected it to be. I thought this was gonna be a Clark Kent in China. But it's not. It's a character who's actually a bully, but has this heroicness inside of him. Also, you get to see traditions from China, which is interesting, because you think of Superman as more of an American culture, because it is. Superheroes in general is very American. So it's cool to kind of see that in the light of another culture. So that's an aspect I really enjoyed. There's some supporting cast that feel a little bit too repetitive, like the Lois Lane type character. And maybe him getting his powers were really fast, and then there's this weird cliffhanger with like the Justice League. I'm like, alright, I didn't expect to see the Justice League right now. But again, what I liked about it and what really made the issue for me was the character himself. I think it's really hard to write a character that's, you know, kind of cocky and make him likable, and that was definitely the biggest highlight here. So New Superman issue 1 gets 4 stars, and that's number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is my favorite DC Rebirth title, and that's Detective Comics issue 936. Now, I love the military theme of this book. I like that this is Kate's book, and you see her time in the military and what it meant to her and how she's trying to teach her students. We still get small moments to shine for the other characters, like Tim kind of taking charge also as like the lieutenant for Kate in many ways. Stephanie just like waking up with her alarm was very Stephanie-like. Cassandra looking at dance. I think even though there were very small moments in this issue, it worked very well. Now the part I didn't really like about it, but didn't totally put the ranking down for me was Kate's father, weird plan for Kate to say, I always planned for you to be part of this army, which is the villain, and he, like, betrayed her and Batman. I thought that was weird, because I never thought the original Detective Comics was going that direction, and it took a weird turn. So, Detective Comics issue 936 still had a lot of enjoyable moments character-wise, but the ending made it go a little bit lower on the list than it usually is. So, I gave that 4 stars still. It's still a good issue, though. Alright, moving on to number 4, which is Silk, issue 10, which has become, like, one of my favorite titles right now. I love where the series is going. Some of the art still doesn't really work for me, at least this style. I feel like some of the line work is weird for the faces at times. But, you know, you get used to it. I still like the cartoonier artwork a bit more. But I really like this issue because finally we get the Black Cat story come to a head, and you still have this really interesting dynamic between Cindy and Black Cat, and that Black Cat's betrayed, but Cindy keeps saying you're not a totally bad person. You could, you know, you could be a good person. Just work it out with S.H.I.E.L.D. And Black Cat says, I can't do that. And she's just upset that she was betrayed. Other stories going on is Cindy's friends knowing that she's a superhero, trying to talk to her and still not having the time to. J. Jonah Jameson just being amazing in the end, being happy that, that Silk is not a villain because it's finally announced on the news that she wasn't and she was working for S.H.I.E.L.D. I just love how he says it. New story, media, wrong as always. Just like, yes, classic J. Jonah Jameson. So I enjoyed that. But what really made the issue for me was the ending. So there's this character who doesn't really say much, but has been following Cindy and knows Cindy's secret identity. So who is this kid? We find out it's Hector. Cindy's old boyfriend. And I'm like, whoa. And I will say the art makes him look a little different from what he has in the previous series. So I was like, make sure that was the boyfriend. But I love that twist. You know, they've been building up that flashback and that storyline for a while. I'm like, they have to do something with him. And finally they do. So I'm really excited to see how that fleshes out. And I really enjoyed this issue once again. So I gave Silk issue 10 4.5 stars. Really enjoyable issue. And that was number 4 on the list. Moving on to number 3, a series I'm really upset to see gone, and that's The Violent, issue 5. This is the last issue, but the creator is going to go on Kickstarter after this and try to bring us the second arc, which I'll totally be backing up. And this issue was heavy. It was a heavy issue, where we have Mason, and let me just remember the wife's name. I think it's Becky. Yeah, Becky and Mason. Well, Mason tells Becky that he killed all these people. And Becky, as much as she loves him, wants Caitlin back and says, you know what, I love you, I've tried, but I can't. I have to think about Caitlin. And at that point, Becky is in the park and Becky calls the police. And Mason's like, oh no, you know, I can't go to jail. I can't go to jail because then I'll never see our daughter, you know, our life will never be normal. And Becky's, you know, Becky's trying to think what's good for her daughter. And Mason doesn't listen. He doesn't want to go to jail again, so he dies. He dies in the end. He gets shot by the police because he wouldn't listen. Let me try to get to that scene. So there, it's just such a dramatic, really, really, really well done. Ooh. Really well done, sorry. A really, really well done scene over there. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then in the end, you see Becky just trying to live this normal life for herself. And she really is trying. She's trying, and I'm excited to see what would the second arc be. And it would be Becky's story, which you wouldn't think of because it has been Mason's story the whole time. And what I really like about this book, too, is it's Mason going down the rabbit hole. He wasn't a bad person, and even with all the bad things he's done, he still wasn't a truly bad person. No character was. It shows that no one is truly evil, even if stories can paint someone truly evil. And artwork is really gritty and perfect, and I love this issue, and I gave this 5 stars, actually. I just really enjoyed it. It was heart-wrenching, a great finale. Even though they weren't planning this to be the finale, it just was really well done. So The Violent gets 5 stars. There's a lot of great books this week. So, number 2 for me, though, is Morning Glories issue 50. this is a series I've loved for a long time, and I've been waiting for a long time for this issue to come out. And I won't go too in-depth with everything, because I did an in-depth analysis on my channel for it, but the way they deal with religious undertones, how many characters died in this issue were amazing. And then in the end, where you find out that Casey dies, and the headmaster says, well, you're just going on summer vacation. So it's definitely a question of what's reality, what's not reality, and it plays with these other realms, these, you know, again, the religious undertones, reincarnation. Like I've always said, Morning Glories is the smartest book that's out there and should be read by many people. It's a book that you could read multiple times and find new meanings from it. It was 100% worth the $5 or $5.99, whatever it was, to buy this. It was well done, very long issue, felt like a trade, really. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. That was number 2. Alright, moving on, and I've never really give this many 5 stars. There's just a lot of good books this week. And number 1 for me was Civil War II, issue 3. Whoa, this is amazing. You know, I've been seeing a lot with Marvel that a lot of times they do their events and it doesn't mean anything. You know, they just do it for shock value, or they do nothing in their events. They're like, find out in the next event. But here, they do a lot, and it's not even the actions that are done that's powerful. It's the way it's written. It's the way it's drawn. The emotion of Hawkeye just putting his arms out and say, yeah, I did this. The emotion of the court, you know, being in court and having, I like the way the art style was where Carol doesn't have her hair up or in her Captain Marvel costume. She's in her Air Force uniform. She has her hair down. Just those really nice touches. But what happens in this issue is that Hulk dies in the hands of Hawkeye. And now it's even more of a question of Civil War, more of a morality question. I thought it was so well done, and it was a death that made sense. You know, they haven't been able to utilize Hulk in a while, but now I think they could rejuvenate Hulk's story because of this. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope that Civil War II could continue on this stride, because I've been very impressed with this event so far. So I gave Civil War II issue 3 5 stars. Like I said, a lot of great books this week. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. This is Comic Uno. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, in the description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. I'll see you guys later. And again, next week I won't have Comic Uno episode, but of course the week after I will. So hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.